Hello again. Back with the Phantom Tollbooth. Before we begin Chapter 2, let's review where we've been. So, in the first chapter, we met our main character, Milo. We learned a little bit about Milo. We learned that Milo is often bored, doesn't really know what to do with himself, is kind of always in a negative sort of mood. And one day, when Milo was in that sort of mood, didn't know what to do, he was in for a long afternoon. He received a peculiar gift. A toll booth. A turnpike toll booth. Something you might see on a highway. And when you drive up there, well, of course your parents drive up there, you might be in the back seat watching along. And when they pay the toll, the arm raises to let them through. A peculiar gift indeed. And if we go back into the text, it says that this toll booth is for use by those who have never traveled to lands beyond. Sort of an interesting saying. Well, let's dive back into Chapter 2, and let's see what happens to our friend Milo. Chapter 2, Beyond Expectations. Suddenly, Milo found himself speeding along an unfamiliar country highway. And as he looked back over his shoulder, neither the toll booth, nor his room, nor even the house was anywhere in sight. What had started as make-believe was now very real. What a strange thing to happen, he thought, just as you might be thinking right now. This game is much more serious than I thought. For here I am, riding on a road I've never seen, going to a place I've never heard of, and all because of a toll booth, which came from nowhere. I'm certainly glad that it's a nice day for a trip, he concluded hopefully, for, at the moment, this was the one thing he definitely knew. The sun sparkled, the sky was clear, and all the colors he saw seemed to be richer and brighter than he could ever remember. The flowers shone as if they'd been cleaned and polished, and the tall trees that lined the road shimmered in silvery green. "Welcome to Expectations," said a carefully lettered sign on a small house at the side of the road. Hey, quick pause. If you printed your map or you are looking at it on your computer, let's go ahead and find where Milo is on our map. I'm going to try to get it as close as I can. It's like working on a mirror though, so it's backwards for me. Alright, so here's where the toll booth is with these arrows. And you see, as he approaches this large house, there we have Expectations. If it takes you a little bit longer to find, you can always pause the video. But go ahead and find it, and just keep an eye on where Milo is, because this map is huge, and we always want to know where the character is. The side of the road. Information, predictions, and advice cheerfully offered. Park here and honk the horn. With the first sound from the horn, a little man in a long coat came rushing from the house, speaking as fast as he could and repeating everything several times. My, welcome, welcome, welcome to the land of expectations, to the land of expectations, to the land of expectations. We don't get many travelers these days. No, we certainly don't get many travelers these days. Now, what can I do for you? I'm the weatherman. Is this the right road for Dictionopolis? Asked Milo, a little confused by the effusive greeting. Well now, he began. I don't know of any wrong road to Dictionopolis, so if this road goes to Dictionopolis at all, it must be the right road. And if it doesn't, it must be the right road to somewhere else, because there are no wrong roads to anywhere. Do you think it will rain? I thought you were the weatherman, said Milo, now very confused. Oh no, said the little man. I'm the weatherman, not the weatherman. For after all, it's more important to know whether there will be weather than what the weather will be. And with that, he released a dozen balloons that sailed off into the sky. Must see which way the wind is blowing, he said, chuckling over his little joke and watching them disappear in all directions. What kind of place is Expectations? Inquired Milo, unable to see the humor and feeling very doubtful of this little man's sanity. Good question, good question, good question, he exclaimed. Expectations is the place you must always go to before you get to where you're going. Of course, some people never go beyond expectations, but my job is to hurry them along whether they like it or not. Now, what else can I do for you? And before Milo could reply, he rushed into the house and reappeared a moment later with a new coat and an umbrella. I think I can find my own way, said Milo, not at all sure if he could. But since he didn't understand the little man at all, he decided that he might as well move on, at least until he met someone whose sentences didn't always sound as if they would make as much sense backwards as they did forwards. Splendid, splendid, splendid! Exclaimed the weatherman. Whether or not you find your own way, you're bound to find some. If you happen to find my way, please return it, as I've lost it years ago. I imagine by now it's rather rusty. You did say it was going to rain, didn't you? And with that, he opened the umbrella and looked up nervously. I'm glad you made your own decision. I do so hate to make up my mind about anything, whether it's good or bad, up or down, in or out, rain or shine. Expect everything, I always say, and the unexpected never happens. Now, please drive carefully. Goodbye, 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 good. His last goodbye was drowned out by an enormous clap of thunder, and as Milo drove down the road in the bright sunshine, he could see the weatherman standing in the middle of a fierce cloudburst that seemed to be raining only on him. The road dipped now into a broad green valley and stretched toward the horizon. The little car bounced along with very little effort, and Milo had hardly to touch the accelerator to go as fast as he wanted. He was glad to be on his way again. It's all very well to spend time in Expectations, he thought, but talking to that strange man all day would certainly get me nowhere. He's the most peculiar person I've ever met, continued Milo, unaware of how many peculiar people he would shortly encounter. As he drove along the peaceful highway, he soon fell to daydreaming and paid less and less attention to where he was going. In a short time, he wasn't paying any attention at all, and that is why, at a fork in the road, when a sign pointed to the left, Milo went to the right. Back to the map. So Milo left Expectations, and as he was driving, he encountered a fork on the road, but he was not really paying attention, and he believes he went in the wrong direction. Go ahead on your map and try to find where that fork in the road was after Expectations that might lead him to the Doldrums. Take some time. Again, if you need to, pause the video until you find it, and then rejoin when you're able. Milo went to the right, along a route which looked suspiciously like the wrong direction. Things began to change as soon as he left the main highway. The sky, once blue, became quite gray, and along with it, the whole countryside seemed to lose its color and assume the most monotonous tone. Everything was quiet, and even the air hung heavily. The birds sang only gray songs, and the road wound back and forth in an endless series of climbing curves. Mile after mile after mile after mile he drove, and now, gradually, the car went slower and slower until it was hardly moving at all. It looks as though I'm getting nowhere, yawned Milo, becoming very drowsy and dull. I hope I haven't taken a wrong turn. Mile after mile after mile after mile. and everything became grayer and more monotonous. Finally, the car just stopped altogether, and hard as he tried, it wouldn't budge another inch. "I wonder where I am," said Milo in a very worried tone. "You're in the Doldrums," wailed a voice that sounded very far away. He looked around quickly to see who had spoken. No one was there, and it was as quiet and as still as anyone could imagine. "Yes, the Doldrums," yawned another voice, but still he saw no one. "What are the Doldrums?" Milo cried loudly, and tried very hard to see who would answer this time. "The Doldrums, my young friend, are where nothing ever happens, and nothing ever changes." You know what time it is. Map time. Milo described the road as winding back and forth in a series of never-ending curves. Can you find that on your map? The name should be the Doldrums. When you know to look for those curving roads, it should make it a lot easier for you. This time the voice came from so close that Milo jumped with surprise. For, sitting on his right shoulder, so lightly he had hardly noticed, was a small creature exactly the color of his shirt. "Allow me to introduce myself," the creature went on. "We are the Lethargarians, at your service." Milo looked around and, for the first time, noticed dozens of them, sitting on the car, standing in the road, and lying all over the trees and the bushes. They were very difficult to see, because whatever they happened to be sitting on or near was exactly the color they happened to be. Each one looked very much like the other, except for the color, of course. And some looked even more like each other than they did like themselves. "I'm very pleased to meet you," said Milo, not sure whether he was or whether he wasn't pleased at all. "I think I'm lost," he continued. "Can you please help me?" "Don't say think," said one Lethargarian sitting on his shoe, for the one on his shoulder had fallen asleep. "It's against the law." And he yawned and fell off to sleep too. "No one's allowed to think in Doldrums," continued a third, beginning to doze off. And as each one spoke, he fell off to sleep, and another picked up the conversation with hardly any interruption. "Don't you have a rule book? It's Local Ordinance 175389J. Milo quickly pulled out the rule book from his pocket, opened to the page, and read, "Ordinance 175389J. It shall be unlawful, illegal, and unethical to think. To think of thinking, to surmise, to presume, to reason, to meditate, or speculate while in the Doldrums. Anyone breaking this law shall be severely punished." "That's a ridiculous law," said Milo quite indignantly. "Everybody thinks." "We don't," shouted the Lethargarians all at once. "And most of the time you don't either," said a yellow one sitting in a daffodil. "That's why you're here with us. You weren't thinking, and you weren't paying attention either. People who don't pay attention often get stuck in the Doldrums." And with that, he toppled out of the flower and fell snoring onto the grass. Milo couldn't help laughing at the little creature's strange behavior, even though he thought it might be rude. "Stop that at once," ordered the plaid one, clinging to his stocking. "Laughing is against the law. Don't you have a rule book? It's Local Ordinance 574381W. Opening the book again, Milo found Ordinance 574381W. In the Doldrums, laughter is frowned upon and smiling is permitted only on alternate Thursdays. Violators shall be dealt with most harshly. Well, if you can't laugh and you can't think, what can you do? Asked Milo. Anything, as long as it's nothing. And everything, as long as it isn't anything, explained another. There's lots to do. We have a very busy schedule. At 8 o'clock, we get up, and then we spend from 8 to 9 daydreaming. And from 9 to 9:30, we take our early mid-morning nap. And from 9:30 to 10:30, we dawdle and delay. From 10:30 to 11:30, we take our late early morning nap. From 11:30 to 12, we bide our time, and then we eat lunch. From 1 to 2, we linger and loiter. From 2 to 2:30, we take our early afternoon nap. From 2:30 to 3:30, we put off for tomorrow what we could otherwise do today. From 3:30 to 4, we take our early, late afternoon nap. From 4 to 5, we loaf and lounge until dinner. From 6 to 7, we dilly-dally. From 7 to 8, we take our early evening nap. And then for an hour before we go to bed at 9, we waste time. As you can see, that leaves almost no time for brooding, lagging, plotting, or procrastinating. And if we stop to think or laugh, we'd never get anything done. You mean you'd never get anything done, corrected Milo. We don't want to get anything done, snapped another Lethargarian angrily. We want to get nothing done. And we can do that without your help. You see, continued another in a more conciliatory tone, it's really quite strenuous doing nothing all day. So, once a week we take a holiday and go nowhere, which was just where we were going when you came along. Would you care to join us? I might as well, thought Milo. That's where I seem to be going anyway. Tell me, he yawned, for he felt ready for a nap now himself. Does everyone here do nothing? Everyone, except the terrible watchdog, said two of them, shuddering. He's always sniffing around to see that nobody wastes time. He's a most unpleasant character. The watchdog? Asked Milo quizzically. The watchdog! Shouted another, fainting from fright, for racing down the road, barking furiously and kicking up a great cloud of dust, was the very dog of whom they had been speaking. Run! Wake up! Run! Here he comes! The watchdog! Great shouts filled the air as the Lethargarians scattered in all directions and soon disappeared entirely. Ruff! Exclaimed the watchdog as he dashed up to the car, loudly puffing and panting. Milo's eyes opened wide, for there in front of him was a large dog with a perfectly normal head, 4 feet, and a tail, but the body of a loud ticking alarm clock. What are you doing here? Growled the watchdog. Killing time, replied Milo apologetically. You see, killing time? Roared the dog so furiously that his alarm went off. It's bad enough wasting time without killing it. And he shuddered at the thought. Why are you in the Doldrums anyway? Don't you have anywhere to go? Well, I was on my way to Dictionopolis when I got stuck here, explained Milo. Can you help me? Help you? You must help yourself, the dog replied, carefully winding himself with his left hind leg. I suppose you know why you got stuck. I guess I just wasn't thinking, said Milo. Precisely, shouted the dog as his alarm went off again. Now you know what you must do. I'm afraid I don't, admitted Milo, feeling rather dull. Well, continued the watchdog impatiently, since you got here by not thinking, It seems reasonable to expect that in order to get out, you must start thinking. And with that, he hopped in the car. Do you mind if I get in? I love automobile rides. Milo began to think as hard as he could, which was very difficult because since he wasn't used to doing it. He thought of birds that swim and fish that fly. He thought of yesterday's lunch and tomorrow's dinner. He thought of words that begin with J and numbers that end in 3. And as he thought, the wheels began to turn. We're moving! We're moving! Milo shouted happily. Keep thinking! Scolded the watchdog. The little car started to go faster and faster as Milo's brain whirled with activity. And down the road they went. In a few moments they were out of the doldrums and back on the main highway. All the colors had returned to their original brightness, and as they raced along, Milo continued to think of all sorts of things, of the many detours and wrong turns that were so easy to take, of how fine it was to be moving along, and most of all, of how much could be accomplished with just a little thought. And the dog, his nose in the wind, just sat back, watching and ticking. Hey everyone, figured for Chapter 2's activities, I would change my environment, and if you notice down in the corner, Herman, he just ate a cricket. I fed him not too long ago, and I figured you'd all want to see how he's doing. So, we just got through Chapter 2. There were some funny characters, the Weatherman, the Lethargarians, the Watchdog, and Milo. And this chapter is all about comparing and contrasting, looking for things that are the same, looking for things that are different, and kind of weighing them against one another. So one of my favorite passages from Chapter 2 is when Milo's driving into expectations for the first time. He describes the setting really vividly. I want to read it to you word for word. The sun sparkled, the sky was clear, and all the colors he saw seemed to be richer and brighter than he could ever remember. The flowers shone as if they'd been cleaned and polished, and the tall trees that lined the road shimmered in silvery green. Can you picture this scene? Can you imagine the sun sparkling on the flowers and trees that line that long road to expectations? What a beautiful thought, especially on today, the first day of spring. Happy spring equinox, by the way. But it wasn't all like that for our friend Milo. In fact, after he left expectations and began to drive, he began to daydream. Compound word, day plus dream, daydream. He began to daydream, and the world around him really started to change. Again, I'm going to go back to the text. Things began to change as soon as Milo left the main highway. The sky became quite gray, and along with it, the whole countryside seemed to lose its color and assume the same monotonous. Monotonous means dull, lacking variety. Losing its color and assume the same monotonous tone. Everything was quiet and the air hung heavily. The birds sang only gray songs. Can you picture this contrasting scene? The Doldrums does not sound like a place I'd like to be. Gray skies, gray grass, gray trees. Even the songs that the birds sing are gray. Can you imagine what a bird singing and gray coming out might look like? I think our author, Norton Juster, is using figurative language. They're not literally singing the color gray out of their mouths, but what do you think he means? And by comparison, if birds might sing gray in the doldrums, maybe in expectations they sing rainbows? I'd love to see how you picture these two locations. If you'd like, take a blank sheet of paper, like I have here. If you have paper without lines, it might even be better. It's up to you. But I would just draw a line right down the middle. You can use a ruler if you'd like. And then on one side, label it expectations. And on the other, label it the doldrums. I would love to see how you picture both different scenes. And next to one another on the page, you can really see that comparison. And for a challenge, I would really encourage you to put a bird in both settings and maybe think about what it might look like for the bird to sing gray songs in the doldrums and the bird to sing rainbow songs or something more vibrant in expectations. I know you're going to be creative with this, and I wish that I could see everybody's. If you think of it, you can take a picture of it and your parents can email it to me. Just like yesterday, I know a bunch of you made your top 5 boredom busters lists, and I know that because a number of you shared them with me, and that was really, really cool. And it also got me thinking, with this time, we have a little bit more time for big projects. Now, I know you're used to doing big projects in the classroom as well, and that's great. But when you're at home, you also have some opportunities for big projects. For me, making these videos, these recordings, and making them fun and engaging, that's kind of becoming my project. It's something I can do every day. It's something I look forward to. It's something that I know I'm going to get better at the more I practice it. And hopefully by the end of this time that we're apart, I will have developed a new skill. I wonder, have you tackled a big project? Do you have one in mind? I'd also love to hear what some of those ideas are. I've included more activities for your parents. It's in an email. So there's that drawing activity. There's also a fun word study for those of you who really enjoyed synonyms and antonyms, homophones, thesaurus. This chapter was full of synonyms, and I put some things in there for you in case you're really interested in doing that. Yeah, that's what I have for you today. I hope you have a lovely first day of spring, and tune in tomorrow for Chapter 3. Catch you then.